Peace and blessings. Welcome back to the channel once again, where we talk all things health and healing from a holistic perspective, and today will be no different. Today I'm going to teach you how to starve cancer and reduce your risk so you don't become a statistic. Okay, I'm going to throw out some statistics in a second, and whether this be information for you or for your mom, your aunt, your sister, your loved one, your wife, your girlfriend, your friend, etc., I think it's really important we understand that we have to shift our perspective around how we think about a lot of forms of dis-ease, and especially this one. And the reason why I say especially this one is because, you know, my respect goes out to anyone out there who's lost someone to breast cancer or any form of cancer for that matter. It is a form of dis-ease that literally slowly and gradually peels away the life of anyone who's affected by it. I had to witness this with my grandmother, for instance, and my grandmother who died of colorectal cancer, she slowly but surely degenerated, and I had to watch her pass in front of me. And what I will tell you is that experience is what has inspired me to do what I do today. Literally in that moment when she passed, I said to myself, I gotta do something for my family. And since that time, it's extended to all you guys out there. But losing my grandmother to breast cancer definitely shaped and shifted me and inspired me to do what I do today. And so I always say I owe everything to her because, you know, without inspiration, you have no sense of purpose. And she gave me a sense of purpose in her passing, and especially passing away from a cancer. And so what I will tell you is that, you know, throughout this journey, I've done so much research on the conversation around cancer and all the things that are available in terms of modern medicine, all the things that are available in terms of natural medicine. And when I tell you, as a healthcare professional working in the hospital and having to witness women go through the chemotherapy, the radiation, the surgeries, the removing their breasts, and so forth and so on, it is a humbling experience, not just for them, but for me as a healthcare professional to watch it. And so it continues to inspire me to learn more and share more. And so this is why I'm doing this video today. And so what I want to do initially is I want to talk about some of the statistics around breast cancer, which I think is really important, specifically here in the US. And the reason why I think it's so important to start with the statistics is because I think for the vast majority of people, they have an understanding of how scary it can be to get a diagnosis of cancer, specifically breast cancer in this case. But it is a whole nother beast when you actually get the diagnosis, you know. And again, my heart goes out to anybody who's had to suffer with something like this, because again, when you are in there with your doctor and, you know, I've seen it. You initially go into this mode of denial and then grief, and then you want to take action. And that part, when I see that, I want to take action and figure out what I need to do so I can keep my life, stay alive, and thrive, and not just be a survivor. When I see that, and then I hear the information that is being given to patients, or sometimes what happens is I hear it afterwards. You know, sometimes when the doctor said there's nothing else we can do, or maybe the patient gets fed up with what they're going through. And I, you know, ask them like questions like, well, what have you done? You know, since this time, since you wanted to take a more holistic approach, what have you done? And they said, you know, I asked them, what did your doctor recommend? When you start to hear those conversations, then you understand that we really don't have a grip on what we need to do to actually help people. And so I'm hoping that what I talk about today will help you. Okay, so let's get into some of the statistics around breast cancer. In the US, 1 out of 8 women are at risk for developing breast cancer. Okay, so 1 out of 8 women. And when you look specifically at African American women, the mortality rate is somewhere around 41%. Okay, 41%. So 41% of women who are of African American descent who get diagnosed with breast cancer will die of breast cancer. Okay, that is very high. So it's really important we know and understand is not just the fact of getting diagnosed that is the problem. It's also really dangerous, specifically for African American women, because they're dying at such an alarming rate. All right. The vast majority of people who are diagnosed with breast cancer are either non-Hispanic Black or non-Hispanic white. Okay. With non-Hispanic whites leading the way in non-Hispanic Blacks shortly after, only about 4% less. Okay. So that's really, really important as well, too, to kind of distinguish what groups are being heavily affected. And specifically with African-American women, they're 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with what is called triple negative breast cancer. Okay, triple negative breast cancer, which is a more difficult to treat and more aggressive form of breast cancer. Okay, somewhere around 33% of all diagnoses for African American women are this type of breast cancer, the most difficult to treat and most aggressive form of breast cancer. Okay, so this is why it's so important we especially have this communication and conversation in the African American community, because again, we get the most aggressive form of cancer and we have the highest mortality rates with this with breast cancer in general. Okay, now here's another statistic that I think is really important, is that 57% only 57% are detected at a localized stage. Now here's what I mean by a localized stage. You've heard of cancer being, able to metastasize, okay? Essentially what that means is the cancer isn't in a local area. So it could start off in the breast tissue, but it could actually end up in the lymphatic system or in the blood vessels and travel throughout the body and end up in the lungs, end up in the liver, etc. That's what metastasis is. It means that it now has gone from being localized to a specific tissue to now being in other parts of the body. Okay? And so specifically, only with breast cancer, only 57% is actually detected localized. Now, what that typically means is this. Most of the time, breast cancer is being detected at a stage beyond early detection. Okay? And so that's why that's a very important statistic. It's because the vast majority of people, 57%, are actually being detected. Only 57% is being detected at a localized level. And when it's not localized, when it's metastasized, it is far more difficult to treat, to manage, to heal than if it were localized. Okay, so that's why I bring up that statistic. Another thing is this. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30% of patients will have a reoccurrence of breast cancer and die. Okay? Now, I brought this up in the other video because I had a case with a friend of mine who actually got a myomectomy, and she had her breast removed. And preemptively, meaning she went in for a checkup, and part of the checkup, they checked for certain risk factors, and one of those risk factors being the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes. It was confirmed that she had an increased risk. And as a result of that, the doctor preemptively recommended that she have her breast removed, which she did. And the reason why, again, that recommendation was made by the doctor was that this would decrease her risk. Well, guess what? She ended up having another form of cancer like a year later. Okay, so again, as I mentioned before in the previous video, just because you remove the tissue, again, it doesn't matter if it's breast tissue, thyroid tissue, liver tissue, if you have cancer there and you remove that tissue, it doesn't mean you've removed the cause of the cancer. So just because you remove the tumor does not mean that you remove the cause. Just because you remove the organ doesn't mean that you remove the cause. Okay, so I think that's hugely important, because even I think what happens sometimes, even when people decide to do this, to have the surgery and remove the tumor, or in some cases remove the organ, in this case being the breast tissue, they're under the assumption that they have found the cure, they've cured the problem, but that's not the case. And I really want people to understand that. So that's why I give that statistic that 25 to 30% of patients will have a reoccurrence even after, okay, after treatment, okay? And that's in an article by the National Institutes of Health in 2022. So I think that's really important to go through those statistics first, so you kind of get an overarching view of, what the problem is, okay? And so let's get into some of the contributing factors. And a lot of these contributing factors are general, and then some of them will be specifically for the African American woman population, because again, when you start to look there, 40% mortality rate. I think that's almost 4 times compared to their white counterparts. That's pretty huge, okay? And then when you think about 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, okay? 33% of all diagnoses for African American women, which is the most aggressive form of breast cancer, okay? And so I think it's really important to figure out, well, what are these contributing factors that are making it, so aggressive, that are making it, more increased risk, okay? So one of the things, after doing a lot of research, one of the things could be prolonged hormonal replacement therapy, okay? Which could be anything from birth control to any other number of options. But prolonged hormone replacement therapy, okay? And because some of these cancers are hormonal, okay? All right, some of them are hormonal in their origin, all right? And so when you think about something like breast cancer, where excessive estrogen levels or estrogen dominance could tilt you in the direction of developing cancer, then prolonged hormone replacement therapy like birth control could definitely be one of the contributing factors. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of physicians and other healthcare professionals who would, be in total disagreement with me. But here's what I will tell you is that if they have a patient who is on birth control or any other hormonal therapy, replacement therapy, and they get a diagnosis of breast cancer, guess what they do? They take them off of it really quickly. So if they remove it as soon as they get a diagnosis of breast cancer, then how is it possible that it can't be contributing to the development of it? Okay, so prolonged hormonal replacement therapy, i.e. birth control and other counterparts. All right, endocrine disruptors that you will find in cosmetic and hygienic products. I think on average, I was reading this article and they were saying every year, when you think about the amount of makeup that many women put on, it is the equivalent of somewhere between 4 and 6 pounds of chemicals, okay? And then you think about the hair care products. A lot of them have endocrine disruptors in them as well too, parabens, phthalates, things of that nature. These are endocrine disruptors that mimic estrogen in the body as well too, okay? So that is another contributing factor. Also, endocrine disruptors that you'll find in pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides. So it's in the diet as well too. You can't just wash these things off, okay? As I mentioned before, toxic cosmetics and hygienic products, anything you put on your skin goes within. That's the best sort of like moniker I have for people. Anything you put on your skin goes within, healthy or unhealthy, all right? And so a lot of the things that are being put on the skin that are put in cosmetic and hygiene products, Many of them will have these endocrine disruptors in them, okay? Another major contributing factor is obesity. Obesity actually increases the likelihood of the triple negative breast cancer, which is the more aggressive form of breast cancer, okay? As a matter of fact, if you have a BMI greater than 30, it increases your risk by 82%. Okay, so obesity is a major contributor, not only for that reason, by increasing your risk for triple negative breast cancer, but also the more body fat you have on your body, guess what? It creates oxidative stress as well too. It creates more oxidative stress in the body, which means more free radicals, which means more damage to the DNA. And guess what? The more adipose tissue or fat tissue you have on your body, it actually produces more estrogen as well too. It produces the enzyme called aromatase. Okay, all right. And so it's really important to understand that even the body fat itself, which most people have, look at as this harmless, you know, um, part of the body, but it is actually not only, you know, causing you to produce more estrogen, creating more oxidative stress, increasing your risk for triple negative breast cancer, but it's also, unfortunately, reducing your lifespan as well too. So, getting down to a healthy weight is going to be very important, and also shifting, your metabolism, because one of the things that happens when you get a diagnosis of cancer, period, it doesn't matter what type of cancer, is that we notice that that tissue has shifted its metabolism from the metabolism that we have in a healthy body to a metabolism of fermentation. So it goes from using oxygen and glucose to now it doesn't need oxygen, okay? It burns sugar, okay? Which means that cancer loves sugar, okay? And we'll talk about that in just a second. So we're gonna have to shift the metabolism, okay? Also, major contributors, also socioeconomic factors as well too. Living in neighborhoods that aren't as safe, so it's not conducive to walk around in a neighborhood, to do exercises, okay? Less likely to, be outside instead of inside. Fewer health food stores or places to get healthy food. Reduce access to healthcare. And when I say this, I'm saying this even in middle class neighborhoods. When you look at the food, I mean, even when you go to the supermarket, you go to the produce section in, African American neighborhoods, underserved neighborhoods, you're gonna notice that there's gonna be restaurants in that neighborhood you'll never see in any other neighborhood. So it's not just based upon whether or not you have money or not. Sometimes it doesn't even matter. You just notice that in neighborhoods that are underserved, that are typically people who are African American descent, the food is just worse. Even the restaurants are worse. Okay, you don't see the Whole Foods and the nice healthy restaurants there. Okay, and also a lack of trust for the medical system. So, and also a lack of health equality as well too. Sometimes what we've noticed, and you can look up these statistics, is that the types of tests that are ran for other ethnicities and those that are ran for African Americans, sometimes they're not doing the same tests. They're not taking the same effort when it comes to doing a checkup and trying to see what's really going on with the patient. And then sometimes a lack of health insurance as well too. Okay, so these are factors. A toxic diet as well too. Again, all of these things tie into contributing factors that lead to an increased risk of not only breast cancer, but the most negative form of breast cancer. And not only the most negative form of breast cancer, the kind of breast cancer that has an 82% risk, okay, when you are obese. And when you start to look at African American women, the unfortunate thing is that somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% of African American women are either overweight or obese. Okay, so hugely important. Those are the contributing factors. So let's get into what is the solutions, because I know that's what people really care about. What is the solution? What do I need to do to prevent this? What do I need to do to starve cancer? Okay, and the reason why I say starve cancer is because we quite often feed cancer. Okay, and we don't even know that we're doing it. That's one of the reasons why I mentioned earlier that when you get diagnosed with any type of cancer, it means that there's been a shift in the metabolism in the body. Okay, and that shift in metabolism is towards what will grow cancer, not what will grow you. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is shift the metabolism. We do that by shifting our diet. Okay, we'll talk about that in just a second. Also, we gotta focus on how do we turn off cancerous genes and how do we turn on tumor suppression genes. Okay, the genes that suppress tumors. Okay, so we want to switch. We got to do a whole DNA repair as well too. Okay, to get our bodies floating or moving in a direction where now we've turned off the switch for, creating more cancer and turn on the switch for suppressing that cancer. Okay, number 3, that goes along with repairing the DNA. We got to repair the DNA. Okay, we got to repair the DNA before we can switch on and off the switches. Okay, and then number 4 is something called angiogenesis. Okay, whenever a tumor is growing, a tumor has its own blood work. Okay, it will start to produce its own blood vessels so that it could grow itself, even if that means taking blood vessels from the heart, taking blood vessels from any area around it. Okay, and then the surrounding tissues don't get that blood supply flowing to it anymore. Okay, so our job is to figure out how do we get this angiogenesis, which is tumors creating their own blood supply. How do we get that to reverse itself? Okay, we'll talk about that in just a second. And number 5, we got to alkalize our life, not just our diet. We got to alkalize how we think. We got to alkalize who we hang around. We got to alkalize the music we listen to. We got to alkalize, what we do in our activities. Our whole life has to be alkalized. And what I mean by that is walking away from anything that is acidic. Okay, so let's get into the cancer starvation diet. How do we starve cancer? That means that you got to walk away from sugar and refined carbohydrates. Okay, because those are 2 of the things that primarily feed cancer, along with sugary beverages. All right, anything you add sugar, even nothing you should be adding sugar to, or any forms of sugar. Okay, you got to walk away from it. You got the cancer starvation diet is no pesticides, all organic, because some of those pesticides have endocrine disruptors that feed cancer as well too. Okay, hugely important. Also, no plastics. No plastics, because guess what? Plastics also have endocrine disruptors in them too. And guess what? When you go into the store, mostly everything that you buy is in plastic. Okay, so we got to walk away from plastic too, so we don't feed cancer as well. And then a hormone-free diet, which means that no meat, no dairy. Okay, and you're probably thinking, well, I'm going to get the meat and dairy that is hormone-free. Well, guess what? You can't. Want to know why? Is because when you eat a cow, you're eating the cow's hormones as well too, the natural endogenous hormones that come from the cow. Okay, and if you're in an estrogen dominant state, which most women with breast cancer are, you have to walk away from anything that causes estrogen to go up in the body. And the estrogen that is inside of a cow, like a dairy cow, which is the female cow, which has hormones in it, for a cow that is 1,000 pounds, not a human that is 120 pounds, that could have a huge impact on your life, a huge impact on your hormonal balance as well too, okay? The next thing is fasting, okay? Fasting is very helpful in the process of healing because fasting allows the body to cleanse itself, okay? You get to a certain level of fasting, you get into a state called autophagy, which I mentioned in the other video. Autophagy is intracellular cleansing, Okay? When you clean the inside of the cell, you're thus cleaning the DNA, which could lead to DNA repair, which could correct the genes and turn the ones that are turned off and the ones that are turned on. So fasting can be very helpful. I tell people, start with no snacks, only meals, no snacks. Okay? Start there. That's the simplest way to go. Snacks is a relatively new concept. Okay? Meals, okay, 1 or 2 meals, like that's the direction we should be trending in. Okay? So fasting can be very helpful. Also, there are some natural angiogenesis inhibitors. They inhibit the angiogenesis that I was talking about earlier, which is the blood supply network that cancer cells create for themselves to feed the tumor. Okay, so there are some natural inhibitors of that, and that goes for anything like cruciferous vegetables, peppers, also certain medicinal mushrooms as well too, ginger, watercress, onions. I'm trying to think of any more. Fennel, that's a good one as well too. So get some of those natural inhibitors of angiogenesis to take away that blood supply from the cancer as well too. Again, it's all about starving the cancer. You starve it, what feeds it, which is sugar, okay, and refined carbohydrates. You don't feed it the plastics, the pesticides, okay. You don't feed it hormones, okay? And then you don't feed it a blood supply. You're starving out the cancer, okay? Another thing that is very helpful is exercise and sauna, okay? So exercise and sauna is very helpful too, and either in combination with each other or separately, but the sauna and also exercising will be very helpful along your journey as well too, because both increase the core temperature of the body. They make you sweat, and when you sweat, you remove toxins from the body. Meditation and mindfulness. Meditation has been shown and proven to help cancer patients as well too. And so adding on some meditation and daily mindfulness can be very helpful. And then detoxification, as I always tell you, you're cancerous because you live a toxic lifestyle, okay? Cancerous because you live a toxic lifestyle. So you got to get the toxins out. But also what's really important is lymphatic drainage, okay? Our lymphatic system, most people don't know enough about the lymphatic system, but the lymphatic system, in terms of fluid volume, it's roughly 80% of the fluid volume in our body. There's more lymphatic fluid in our body than there is blood, okay? And part of what the lymphatic system does is it removes not only toxins from the system, okay, but it will actually take cancerous cells from the system, put it in the actual lymphatic system. Lymph nodes will go to war with the cancer, kill it, and then it can be delivered out of the body like sewage. Okay, so that's why the combination of those two is very important. And one of the ways you can help yourself in terms of lymphatic drainage is with herbal detoxing, with a rebound trampoline as well too. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful in terms of, like, I gave you the sort of the perspective or the approach, mental approach in the video before. And in this video, I gave you some very concrete things that you can embrace and apply in your own lifestyle. Because again, you got to remember this, and I'll leave you with this. I said this in the previous video. Only about 5 to 10% of cancers are attributed to your genetics, your genes, okay? The reason why that's so important is because breast cancer isn't one of those, okay? So it means that if it's not genetic, even though like there's so many things around us that tell us it is. You got the BRCA gene, you got the HER2 gene, et cetera, et cetera. The real issue isn't genetics. The real issue is what is called epigenetics. And epigenetics deals specifically with your behavior and your environment, okay? 90% of what's really causing your cancer is your behaviors, your eating behaviors, your ability or inability to cope with stress, your environment. Maybe you live in a toxic environment. Maybe that toxic environment is people. Maybe that toxic environment is environmental chemicals. But epigenetics is what's causing 90% of cancers, which means that this is a good thing because you can control your environment and you can control your behaviors. All right. So until the next time, peace and blessings and Godspeed.